Hi, everybody. So, raise your hand if you're an introvert. Right? So one of the things, on the career path that you're heading towards is it might involve a lot of public speaking. I'm an introvert. I can tell you it gets better, but you'll always be a little bit nervous when you get up in front of a big room of people, so just wanted to acknowledge that. For example, I already lost my clicker. Okay. So while I'm introducing myself, I want to tell you something that's going to be handed out to you. So Matt, the guy in the back, is going to be coming around. He's going to be giving you a couple pieces of paper, and there's going to be a list of ID numbers being routed around that will have your name plus your EXITO ID number, and you're going to want to look at that list and just write your number down, and it'll go on a piece of paper by the end of my presentation. So just to let you know that's coming. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about academic support networks, and then towards the end of it we're going to do an exercise or an activity, part of which you'll keep for yourself, and part of which will be gathering data for the evaluation of EXITO overall and whether we're impacting your academic support networks. So we're going to kind of skip through part of this presentation because a lot of what Tom talked about is sort of relevant in the whole conversation we just had over the past couple hours, because it is all about mentoring. It's different support roles you might have in your academic support networks. So I'm Jennifer Blakesley. I'm research faculty here at PSU. I'm here because of my academic support network. I graduated from the PhD program a few years ago, and Tom was a big mentor of mine. And so through my relationship with Tom, I was connected with the EXITO program. Most of my research tends to have to do with three things. Mentoring, usually youth mentoring or young adults. Social networks, any aspect of social networks, mapping them, studying them. And then service systems serving youth in foster care, juvenile justice, those kinds of service systems. So today we're hitting two of my interests, the mentoring and the social networks. And I want you to start thinking about, I know you've had a presentation about your elevator speeches. Have you all started thinking about your elevator speeches? Kind of have that in the back of your head because you're going to want to refer back to that when we talk about what's coming up next here. Yeah. Okay. So social networks. When I say that, we all have people in our lives from various domains. We've got our personal life, we've got friends and family, all the hobbies, all the interesting, fun things we do that have nothing to do with school and work. That's not what we're talking about today. Today, we're talking about the ones that have to do with school and work. So academic and career, and you guys are in a really unique situation because you're undergraduates and you're already thinking about your career. So I know I shared in the earlier panel that when I was an undergraduate, I had no idea where I was going after that, and I had no idea research was a thing that existed. So I'm so excited to see a room full of you guys here, because there is a career path that is waiting for you, that's eager for you to follow it, and the biggest thing you have to do is build a social support network for your academic goals and follow your own interests, whatever your interests are. Keep thinking about those. You're not going to know exactly what they are yet. You can change them anytime you want. Just try to stay curious, be interested. So we're going to talk about your academic support network. So as you go through your academic career, your undergrads now, as you move into grad school, as you graduate and get your first postdoc career, as you move into the research world, you're going to have a different combination of people in your networks, serving all different kinds of roles. Those mentors are going to change. Some people are going to start out being one thing, they're going to end up being something else. Some relationships are going to grow and really support you for years and years. Some people you're going to know for a year and they'll do something kind of very small and specific to help you get to your next stage. That's all good. That's all part of academic support mentoring. So some of those relationships, like we talked about before, they're going to be assigned to you. Some of the ones are going to be ones you identify. It's going to be the professor that you just click with. It's going to be the grad student who's supervising you in a lab and you just love talking about science together. So you're going to have a combination of both of those. Some are going to be short-term, some are going to be long-term. They're both important. Some are going to be stronger relationships. This came up with the mentoring conversation before. And some of them are going to be what we call weak ties in social network research. And so strong ties are the people that stay in our lives for a long time. We get a lot of different kinds of support from them. They feel like family if they're not already family. Weak ties tend to refer to friends of friends. They tend to refer to short-term relationships. But research shows that's how we all get to the next stage. It's how we all get jobs. Because the people that we have strong relationships with, we all know the same people. So it's the friend of a friend who is like, oh, I actually know a student that would be great for that project. You want me to put you in touch with them? So remembering, because I know it came up when we were talking about mentoring, the strong ones matter. They matter a lot. But the weak ties, the kind of strategic ties that you build, the kind of intentional relationships you reach out and develop, those are important too. So also start thinking about your network as interconnected. So as you move through undergrad and beyond, the people that you're working with also work together. They have relationships with each other. You want to pay attention to your reputation as a student. You want people to think of you as someone who, is responsible and shows up on time and is excited about learning and helps others with their learning, because the people in your support network are connected to each other, and they're saying good things about you, and they're thinking of you when they hear of an opportunity. So we are going to, do we have handouts yet? Oh, nope, they're on their way. Okay, we'll skip that. So we're going to talk about a few different functions today. It's a little bit different. So Tom was talking about you're going to have the peer mentors and the career mentors and the research mentors. We're going to think about it a little bit differently for this exercise. We're going to think of it not as the title that they have, but what you actually get through those relationships. And we're going to look at 5 different ways. And we're going to think about who in your life is already providing these things, and I'll detail what these all are. But the overview is we're going to talk about sponsors, we're going to talk about mentors, we're going to talk about coaches, we're going to talk about collaborators. Colleague is a similar word for collaborator that you could use, and then emotional support, or counselor, sort of. And we can map these relationships out, and the papers that are coming around too will show you what we're going to do as an activity together. So first, we're going to talk about sponsor. So sponsor, someone who has higher status, more influence than you. They can open doors for you. This is probably not going to be a super strong relationship. It might be, but it's going to be. So who ended up here this week because someone kind of nudged you and said, hey, I think you might be interested in this EXITO program? So someone had their eyes on you and thought, I've got a really sharp student in my chemistry class, and I read about this program, and that's who I'm going to tell about this program. Those are your sponsors. These people have enough status and influence that they can open doors for you, very importantly, when you're not in the room. So when one of their peers comes to them and says, hey, I'm looking for a great student for a new project, or these are the people that can write you letters of recommendation. And an example of why these might not be super long-term relationships, for the career mentees that I have, I wrote a letter of recommendation for one of them after I'd known her for 3 or 4 months, and it was completely easy to do that and say glowing things about her because I'd been meeting with her for an hour and we'd just been talking about how awesome she was and what her interests were. So I felt like I could write a glowing letter about her interests and her intellect and what a pleasure she was to work with. So sponsors aren't necessarily someone who knows you super well. It's that they know enough to know that you're going places and they're comfortable recommending you for something. So this is, again, where your reputation as a committed student matters a lot. Being a good student is kind of like a full-time job, which is tough because a lot of you have jobs on top of that, 1 or 2. So it's just something to be mindful of, especially as you go further along into grad school and beyond, that it's not just, it's kind of a job. You want people to think of you next time they have a job opening. You want them to think, you know what, she was a really sharp student in my class, and I'm looking to pay someone to help me out in the lab, and they'll think of you. So next, we're going to talk about mentoring. So it's a very broad term. We narrowed it down a little bit in this case. Last year, we called this mentoring in your field, and we kind of broadened it a little bit. It's someone who can sit down and talk with you about your ideas, about your substantive interests, whatever research, science paths you're interested in, or maybe they're in a different field, but they have a kind of job that you want to have. They know what it's like to be an academic. They know, they can sort of brainstorm with you about where you're going next. You can have these developmental conversations with them where you go in with an idea of what you want to think about, but you need to talk through it with someone who has been there. So this is what we mean by mentoring. They know a lot about the fields you're headed into. They're a role model for you. These are the people, when I think of mentoring, I think of an hour-long discussion that doesn't necessarily have a long agenda, but it's about you and where you're headed. So yeah, you're going to have a lot of these kinds of mentors through the program and just through your careers. Tips for working with these types of people: be prepared. Think through at least what you want to talk about. It is so helpful as a mentor when someone comes in with their list of maybe just broad questions. So tell me about how to pick a grad school. Tell me about writing a paper for publication. So maybe it's a broad question, but it's something that they can kind of download to you and then check in where you're at, help you think about what you want to do next. Value their time. You're busy, they're busy. We talked about this earlier. It's just important. It helps build the relationship. Follow up with them when they give you great advice and you follow it, because it's an excuse to contact them again and develop the relationship further. And then expect going into it, we talked about it before, you're going to have different levels of comfort. It is sometimes awkward, and that's okay. I didn't get a chance to mention this in the panel, but I had 2 mentees, and one, we did just kind of have that clicking chemistry, just our combination of personality types. And then one, it was a little more awkward, and we just sort of structured it a little bit more, and we focused more, okay, what do you really need to get out of this? And we got through it. We had a good year, and we're continuing next year, and I'm so happy. And one of the, okay, I'll skip what I was going to say there. Expect it to be awkward sometimes, and that's okay. Let's see, anything else I want to say about mentors? Okay, so for your elevator pitches, those kind of topics that you're interested in, that's who you talk to mentors about. Those are, when we use the word mentor and when you fill it out on your map, that's what we're talking about, the people you have those kinds of conversations with about, let's talk about statistics, let's talk about mental health treatment in this particular community, that kind of stuff. Let's see, everybody's got their maps now? Okay, don't start filling them out yet. We'll get to that next. Okay, next up, coaching. So coaching, in the way that we're envisioning it for the maps, is really skills coaching. It's someone who's telling you something very specifically. They're showing you how to do something. This is your supervisor in the lab. This is someone who is probably a level or 2 above you or further along in their development in their career, but they're sitting with you and they're showing you how to do something. So versus mentoring, where you're having a broad conversation, you're at the computer together, you're in the lab together. They give you helpful, specific feedback about how you're doing, and it involves you being coachable, being open to feedback. That nobody likes to be, nobody likes criticism. So getting to that spot where you're like, okay, I need to learn this. I know I need to learn this. This person shows you how to do something. It's really important in developing your skills as a student. This could be your advisor, it could be a tutor as well. Your research mentor actually is going to be doing a lot of coaching. Your peer mentor will also be doing a lot of coaching, I imagine. So next up, collaborator or colleague is probably a better word for this, but we'd already printed the maps, so I couldn't switch it. So a collaborator or colleague, these are the people in the room with you. These are who's doing the work with you. You're working on a project together. You're both on the hook for whatever deadline you've committed to. You're learning together. You're committed together to finishing a project, whether it's for a class or in a few years it's going to be writing papers, it's going to be doing research together, it's writing a grant proposal. So this is your colleague, and you are starting a long career of lots and lots of colleagues in your network. Not just a coworker, but someone that you're in it together. You're in the trenches together, developing knowledge. One thing to think about with collaborators or colleagues is reciprocity, that you're going to have opportunities in the next few years, maybe not right away, where let's say you're working for a researcher who's kind of old school and isn't very good at graphics, and you're a whiz at graphics. Step up and be like, I can help you with that. And put in the time and help them out, and they're going to think of you next time. They're like, oh, I need a sharp student to help me with this paper, and they're going to add you as a co-author, and you're going to have your first publication. So gaining collaborators, gaining academic support isn't always about what they're doing for you, although that's a very important part of it, and that's what it should be focused on. But you're going to have little opportunities where you can do something for them to help them out, and it's going to help build that relationship. Peer mentors, they might be colleagues for you. And last, emotional support. We all need this. Hopefully we all have it. This is the person that you can vent to. This is the person that's a safe space. This may be someone who's also a mentor or a collaborator, but it may not be. These may be the people in your personal life that you already have that learn enough about what you're doing in this world that they can help kind of talk you through it. They can counsel you through it when needed. So it's usually going to be someone from friends or family, or a student peer of yours, or a near peer, so someone you feel safe sharing with. It's not going to be all your mentors. Some of your mentors, this isn't going to be part of the role they feel comfortable with, and that's okay, because hopefully you're getting something else from them that's also very important. So kind of that counselor role. So to recap, these are my short versions of what to call these. Sponsor knows who to recommend for things. They are well networked. They have lots of connections. These are the people that are going to intimidate you a little bit. They should. Make a good impression. Mentor discusses with you what to do next, what on your particular path, what to think about next, what's the next step to go where you're going. The coach is going to show you how to take that next step. They're going to walk you through it. The collaborators walking that next step with you. They're working with you. And then emotional support, the person who listens and understands you. So I have an example. So it's the first time you're going to write a paper for publication. The sponsor is the person who suggested you for the lab that you're in, or suggested to someone else that you would be a great help on this paper. The mentor is the person who talks through with you the various ways you might approach the research or the analysis, or how you might frame the paper, like maybe take it from this angle or this angle. You have those big discussions. The coach is talking you through, okay, the paper is supposed to have an introduction, a method section, a discussion section, and a conclusion section, and here's what they should all contain. That kind of knowledge, coaches are very valuable for that, because most of your mentors aren't going to have necessarily time to download that to you. But it's definitely important knowledge to develop. Collaborators, the person that's writing the paper with you. They're in the trenches. You're committing to deadlines with each other. I'll get that to you by next Friday, and you'll get it back to me by next Wednesday. And emotional support is the person you call and you say, oh my God, this person I'm writing a paper with is driving me crazy. Just so you can vent to that person who's not connected to the project. So that's the overview. So now everybody's got your maps in front of them. Here's what we're going to do. The smaller page, we had a printing mix-up, so the smaller page, the normal size paper, that's for you to keep. I'll walk you through what we're going to put on that, but you're not turning that into Exito, you're keeping that. The other piece of paper, have it grid size up, so the lines, forget there's a map on the other side. So yeah, just a little one-side, two-sided printed thing. So I'm going to start talking about the map, and since you're keeping this, feel free to sort of start scribbling names down as we go. So we're using the map to brainstorm the names of people who are already in your academic network, and you can include people you've met this week if you're pretty sure you're going to maybe stay in touch with them, you're going to reach out to them, you're going to see them back on campus. Go ahead and include those people. So this is brainstorming, it's generating names. Think about maybe in the past year, people that have supported you in the past year in these ways we've talked about: coaching, mentoring, sponsoring, collaborating, and emotional support. And then you've got those three sections, and I'll show you mine that I filled out. So this reflects my last year of grad school. So this is a few years ago, and I told you I was an introvert. One thing I want to stress is this is after 5 years of grad school, and there's still not a whole ton of people on there. So you might not have a bunch of names on your map, and that's totally okay. You're just starting out. And you might end grad school with this many, and that's great. I got here to be with you guys today. So when you look at this professional academic network, those are basically the people that it's their job to support you, or they've signed up to support you. They're faculty, they're advisors, they're tutors, they're the mentors you get paired with. They're people that are campus-based. So when I look at mine, that's basically my dissertation committee. It was the advisor for the PhD program, and a couple other people that were really important in helping me get to next steps. Peer academic network. So those are your same age or same developmental level. So yeah, I shouldn't say age. It's really about, are they undergrads with you? It doesn't matter if there's a 20-year age difference. Are you both at the same level of academic development? That's your peer. Your near peer is going to be a couple years ahead of you, or they're going to be a grad student. So that's who would go here. So again, kind of school-based relationships, not your friend that's just your friend. And then down in personal support network, that's where you can put your friend who's just your friend. These are family and friends, but I want you to think about the reason I only have 2 names up here, my Aunt Lori and my friend Emily. I have other people that are my friends and family, but these are the 2 people that I talk to about school. My aunt heard me talk so much that eventually she knew who I was talking about. So when I said so-and-so, she knew who I was talking about, so could counsel me through it. It wasn't just me venting and her saying, it'll be okay, honey. She was able to say, yeah, but Tom's sometimes like that, right? And it's like, yeah, thanks, Aunt Lori, for the reminder. Emily was a friend that I worked with. We knew a lot of the same people, so I could talk to her about, how should I approach this faculty person? How do I write this email? What do you suggest? So it was academic type stuff that I could talk to her about. So when you're filling out your personal support network, we want to honor and value friends and family, but we want to think about, okay, who are the ones that are really helping you be here today? Because they care about why you're here. They know why you're here. I think a student said earlier that their family said, we're here to support you, but we can't help you. And I thought that was kind of a great way to put it. It's the ones that can help you. Okay, so let's go ahead and... Okay, so these are just the guidelines for while you're filling this out. We'll take 10, 15 minutes. And again, go ahead and put people you've met this week if you think they're going to be important in your academic network. When we move on to the next page, you're not going to include those people, but for now, write down their names so you remember them. You're keeping this map. So take your time. Questions? Okay, are people ready to move on to the grid type matrix thing? Okay, and if you already start filling it out and then when I explain the instructions, if it changes what you want on there, just raise your hand and Matt will get you a fresh one. So the grid is being used for the EXITO evaluation. So for the grid, I want you to look at your map, all the people you brainstormed, and think about the relationships that you had before you got here. So you might add some new friends and collaborators and coaches to your map that you've met this week. Don't include them on the grid. I want you to think about, like a couple weeks ago, the people that were providing regular support. So when you think about that core support network, the person that you meet with weekly or maybe once a month, the professor, the teacher that was really helpful in getting you here, and you talked to them a couple weeks ago and told them you were coming. Start narrowing it down, and it'll be pretty obvious how you answer the questions, but you'll include those people and then circle which part of the network map you put them in, and that's just because for the evaluation we want to measure whether we're adding people to your professional network, whether we're adding people to your peer network. So you'll do this again in a year. Which is why if you just met people today, they'll show up on your map, on your grid in a year if those relationships develop into something that's supportive to you. So you'll just fill out the little circle for the mentor, sponsor, collaborator, and then just circle a little bit about the strength of the relationship in terms of how helpful they are to you, how long you've known them, and how often you communicate with them, and that's emails. Whatever works. So go ahead and fill those out. Does anybody have any questions, or do they need a fresh grid before they start? Okay. And again, here's an example. This is mine after 5 years of graduate school. You may have 1 or 2 people. That's normal. that's to be expected. You may already have a bunch. So. Who's heard of imposter syndrome? Do you want to say what you think it is? Or I can tell. And who's felt that way before? Exactly. I want to get the idea in your head now because you've got a long road ahead of you. Imposter syndrome is this graphic. If you Google imposter syndrome, this graphic will come up. That so often we feel like we know a tiny little bit and everybody around us knows so much more than we do. And that's not the case. It's that everybody knows their tiny little bit, and sometimes your little bits are going to overlap, and you're going to realize it, and you're going to generate conversation. But understand that it's not something unique to undergrads, it's not something unique to academics. Everybody feels this feeling. My other graphic, if you can't read it, says, all of these people are thinking this thought. All these people really seem to have it together, and I still have no idea what's going on. It's human nature. You're going to feel this your whole life. So if over the rest of this week, when you go back to campus, when you're in your classes, you're feeling like, oh my God, I don't belong here. This isn't me. These people know something I don't know, and that's why they're in this room, and they're going to find me out pretty soon. It's not true. It's just not true. Talk to your mentors about it if you're feeling it, and your mentor will tell you the story about the meeting they were in earlier that day when they felt the same thing. It's important to name it, I think, and to recognize it and know that. Has anybody heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect? So there's a psychologist who has proven that so they've given people tests, and then after the test they've asked people, how well do you think you did on the test? And there's a statistically significant relationship that the better you think you did, the worse you did. And the people in the room who were saying, I don't know, I think I did pretty good, probably about average, are at the top of the scale. That's happening all the time. So if you're saying, oh, I probably did about average, well then you did great. So own it, feel it, embrace it. You're allowed to not know what you're doing yet. You're allowed to change your mind. Okay, I'm done. Who's next? Thank you.